David's like, that guy seems weird. I don't like him. And he's like, David, you never like anyone. You're so judgmental. But Will, where did you go? Will? Did we lose Will, guys? All right, I'm still there. Phew. I can be in charge on my own. Okay, guys, what are we going to do? Will's not here. How are we going to take over the channel? No, that's silly. We're not going to do that. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, Unresolved Textual Tension. It's me, your host, Maria, and with me today is my ruggedly handsome co-host, William. Ooh.
What's up, guys? Extra rugged, extra handsome today. Maria is back from her vacation, and today we're doing a book that's different than our normal fare. We're doing John Dies at the End, which is not a girl book for girls. This is a dude book for dudes. Would you agree with that?
I would say it is not YA targeted to women, but I would say it is more adult and targeted to a general audience. But I guess, because like at no point reading it was I like, yes, this is for dudes. But I guess if I think about it, I would say that it is more targeted towards dudes.
So to very quickly break it down, the book is written by a guy called David Wong, he was the editor for Cracked at one point, which is a website that's like very juvenile in a lot of ways. That was actually his username, so it's kind of like he's talking to himself. Or like, it was kind of more mimetic, not mimetic is the word I'm looking for. There's another word, of the early internet kind of a thing. And it's written in a first person that's very specifically him talking to someone and very much influenced by his voice. And that voice is like a middle school boy or a high school boy.
Deadpool-esque.
It's funny because I was never that guy, but I'm really familiar with the parlance of how he talks because this was written, I don't know, like 10 or even 15 years ago or something like that.
People
and it
still
exists.
have flip phones.
They still have flip phones. Right. It's like there's not Starbucks everywhere yet, but there are Taco Bells everywhere. And there is like a Blockbuster type of a feeling. Like people use DVDs still to rent. And like I came of age in that time. And so like I'm not that guy. But I'm familiar with that parlance in kind of a nostalgic way. Like I could code switch into talking that way. One of the ways this shows up is that the R word is used. Somebody in our Discord counted like 20 times in the book, which is like a very specific time period where it became popular before it became, hey, you can't use that. And we're now going to refer to it as a letter word instead of the actual word. Yeah, and it's that narration tone mixed with cosmic horror, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, because it's got like American Pie conversational vibes, like the dialogue in that, and also Deadpool, as far as the way Deadpool talks to the camera. Yes. and narrates things for you while it's happening. And also where like sometimes something will be described and then the narrator says like the opposite, and so it's not true, just similar in Deadpool because you're seeing it. He's narrating disingenuously. And it's specific. It did take me a goddamn minute to get used to it, man. It was because it's a lot. It's a lot.
And it is. And again, you have to. I think that's one of the reasons some people on our Discord didn't love this book. I mean, there are other reasons, and a lot of them are just very legitimate. But like, it is a very specific voice, and I could see just not clicking with the book because of that voice. I think that the author underneath that middle school boy veneer does a lot of actually kind of interesting things and more bookish things that I think work well. At the same time, this was adapted from a series of blog posts. And so the legacy of serialized fiction, to quote Dan Olson from his 50 Shades of Grey review, because I've watched that way too many times, kind of lingers in the book in that it's really 3 books stuffed into one or 3 novellas stuffed into one. And some of that, there's still some inconsistencies there, especially in structure.
100%. And it does make the reading of it very disjointed at times because it's very hard to have a complete build-up climax denouement and then start with another immediately build-up climax denouement and then another build-up climax denouement in one, because it's not even like, how in Kushil we complained that there's like 3 arcs to each story. I felt, okay, there we go. Okay.
Oh, your
Sorry.
camera has no chill today. It's excited to see you too.
It really is. I'm gonna try use as little hand movements as possible. Good luck to me.
Yeah, who knew the camera could be anti-Greek? It's a Turkish camera.
It's a don't say that. Oh my god.
For those who don't know, Greece and Turk have a famous enmity between them. The Turks may or may not have tried to genocide the Greeks several times. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway.
No, you know what it reminded me of? And the book is actually broken up into book 1, book 2, book 3. It reminded me sort of of Uprooted, because we talked about how that book is episodic, but that book is episodic in a way where each one builds on the next in terms of the tension not breaking. Whereas this one is very specifically tension builds, breaks, then builds, breaks, builds, breaks. Whereas there is like an ending
Uprooted
point.
had
Whereas
that point. This book is literally like just
yeah,
3 complete loops.
for those who can't see, we're doing like our
Like
hand gestures are growing more. Yeah.
staircase building versus just 3 little hills next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because let me tell you, it really and to put it in perspective, at the end of the first third, which is book 1, I was like, wow, what a story. I thought it was over.
I was like,
oh,
what is the
done.
rest of this book?
And then I looked at it and I was like, I have 2/3 to go. And then I went to Discord and somebody talked about how it had been posted on a blog, and so it had been serialized, so there was obviously a very episodic nature to it, and I was like, oh god, I literally thought I was done. I started early and I was like, look at me finishing, so no, it's a lie. And Will and I briefly talked about it, and we both think that the first and third book are better than the second. The second weirdly feels like it has the least impact on the overall plot. Like,
you know what it is as well is that it's the one that's most about like the impact of the violence that happened or the things that happened in the first one,
first book. Yep.
like Truth of the Divine style. But like A, it's not super deep, and B, that's kind of just not a boring thing to read, but it's not as engaging.
Yep.
And the book tries to offset that by having like this mystery of like what's in his shed, or whose dead body is in the shed this
No,
whole
that's
time.
the third one.
What's the second arc then?
The second one is with the different newscasters and the Chrissy girl, the cockroach car, and the shadow people taking control of.
You're totally right. It's because it's actually also very short. No, that one is so
literally
boring.
forgot it. We forgot it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I did. I think I patched it into the beginning of the second one, but you're right because it's so short. Also, hey Limburg, she's getting it from the car. I read your post on Discord. It was really interesting and like had a lot of interesting stuff to say. So I may bring it up. Yeah, I honestly can't remember the second one. Angry Otter says, by the way, this is a mid-month book club book for our Patreon, which we have. Maria,
we do.
We have a new tier on our Patreon as well. Would you like to explain that to people?
It is new old tier. It is the revamping of the benefits of the parasocial darling tier. So we have 3. We have like a normal patron, we have the book club patrons, and then we have the parasocial darlings, which previously was everything of the other ones, and you get our name in our credits. But now we have upped the stakes. Now once a month, Katie and Will, sometimes me, if I have time to do 2 videos in one weekend, we'll see.
No, that never happens. She barely has time to do one.
It doesn't happen. But anyway, we'll be doing a critique live stream where they pick a book, either a good one or a not so good one. And so I'm sure a lot of you have seen already the video where Will and Katie critiqued their own writing. They also did the critique video for the first 6 pages of The Savior's Champion. And so it'll be that kind of close reading critique once a month. And it'll be super cool, super awesome. And normal viewers will only get access to little trailer 10-minute versions of the videos. And so if you want that full, like not only the live stream, but to be able to watch the full video later, you'll need to be a parasocial darling, my parasocial darlings.
Yep, that's just how it is. Partly because I just didn't want to clutter our channel, which is a very clear theme, and like I don't want to like mess with that chemistry. And also we need to pay for food. Unfortunately, my dog has to eat. So if you're interested in that, or even just our normal book club, which this is one of, we do it as a live stream. And next week, our patrons picked it through a poll, which one we're going to do, She Who Became the Sun. And they get to pick one a month, and this is the one we get to pick. And hilariously, I picked this one because I thought it was going to just be me and Katie while Maria gallivanted around the south of Europe. And because I thought this would mix with me and Katie's sense of humor very well, because I've often said that Katie is a fey creature with a middle school boy's sense of humor. And I didn't think Maria would miss it. And then hilariously, Katie had to miss it. So, but I think we'll still have a very good conversation.
So okay. You got the second best host for the job, guys.
I'm the only host you'll ever miss or never miss because I'm always here because I don't have a real job. So why don't you tell us what the premise of the book is?
The premise of the book is two 20-something, early 20-something boys are shoved face first into supernatural chaos and the end of the world. Specifically, at the very heart is something from another world, another dimension, another plane of space-time, trying to get into ours and fuck shit up. And that's the basic premise, like at the most, like if you stripped it down. Now, are both of these early 20 boys like standard YA or like hero types? No. John fixates on his dick. David is grumpy as hell and fixates on boobs. Man, that scene with that Marcy character in the diner, I was like,
this reminds me of Will.
Someone. It does remind me of. But anyway, and so it's the, as we said before, the humor and dialogue of like American Pie, but within this vast cosmic horror that is just has so many, like Lindbergh just mentioned in one of the comments something that did happen in the second book that was actually really interesting and creepy, and for me it's a perfect example, and I'll talk about this when we get to it, of how this author shines in the moments that are like mainly normal, and then there's one just really weird creepy thing happening. And like we said, it's 3 books that have their own arcs, but that all build on each other as far as the overall story of there is something knocking on our universe's door and attempting to get in. There is in the 3rd book a little skosh of romance, which is honestly in most places my favorite amount. Like, I
thought it was cute.
It's so cute. And there's that point where they kiss, but he never says they kiss. His mouth just tastes like Altoids after. And I'm like,
it made my little shipper heart go pitter patter.
It really does. I haven't had something make my little shipper heart go pitter patter in a minute.
You know what it is that we have read. I would not appreciate this book as much as I do if we hadn't read as many bad books as we have. And I don't know why, but I kept thinking about Little Thieves during this book because that book is such shit. And if you compare the romance, the romance is much worse than this book's. And that's why I think this one's works is it's very simple in certain ways, but also it feels very sort of organic. There are places that I don't think it works very well. Like, I don't really think the female character is a character so much as she is just like a feminine presence. But part of that way, the part of the way this book kind of works is that a lot of everything is filtered through him talking to you instead of just a first person as a stand-in for third person. And so it kind of makes sense that he doesn't go into other people's viewpoints very much in terms of how he sees the world. And that kind of works. There's a character called Jennifer Lopez because I don't know, she looks vaguely like hers or something like that. Or no, that's her name, and she doesn't look like her.
Jennifer Lopez,
who he dates at one point, and she has like 3 lines of dialogue, but she's actually used very skillfully in the story to tell stuff about the main character, and like through the silences in how he describes her and how they interact, you actually get to know a lot about him. But if this was just switched to third person, it would feel super underwritten and weird.
Oh, absolutely. And this is one of those instances where I think first person's being used really, like, you could not write this book, like Will said, in third person. The other characters, I think the only character who would come away decently would be John. Like,
yeah,
that'd be it. Now, there are some comments that I think are valid that I just want to highlight. Angry Otter said, there are also moments where everything is wild and I just disconnected because it's way over the top. And I will agree, there are times where it's very easy just because of the amount of like weird stuff all happening at once, where it is easy to disconnect. I will say, for my purposes, now part of this is I was on a plane and I kept falling asleep, but I listened to the first 2 hours of this book 4 times. I was sleepy and I was on a plane, and then the plane would go woo, and then and the thing is, if you read this book, there's a lot of weird shit that happens in the first 2 hours. You should not fall asleep. You shouldn't be able to fall asleep. But I think it's because there's so much weird stuff happening. It's really hard to ground yourself. Like, for the longest time, I thought the epilogue was like part of the actual story, and then I was really confused afterwards about what happened to that like thing. And it's just, and so I do agree with that, Angry Otter. They also say, I'm glad the sex scene was not there, just the romance. Lindbergh says, this author has some good horror vibes. I'd want to read more horror from them, but without the frat boy humor. I would also really like to see a book that was minus that American Pie overlay.
You know what it is that the book goes too hard into it sometimes. Like, I'm more comfortable kind of with that, code switching essentially, but it tries too hard sometimes, and it's like, this isn't funny, and this is clearly you trying to be a little bit shocking and crude. I could see this author doing something more like, almost like Gideon the Ninth kind of a style, if a little bit more out there, if he restrained it a little bit, and it could become more, because that book is creepy at times, Gideon the Ninth and Harold the Ninth and Nona the Ninth. Islo says, no, I love the frat boy humor. I liked it at parts. I think parts of it are really funny, but
I think for this book, it's doing its thing. But I would like to see a book of his without it. Like, and not having to do with these characters, but a different. Just like, what would his writing be like if he was doing horror, not with the frat boy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there are parts that made me really laugh, but there are also parts that don't. The book also is weirdly, I don't want to say deep, but like it really wants to talk about certain concepts, more so than other books do, where like they're just not even really brought up or mentioned. Again, for some reason, my mind went to Little Thieves. I don't know why. I just think that book is so bad. And that kind of comes up. There's also a real, not depth, but a sense of realness to some of the characters. Like, these are real people with real emotions, even if they're being filtered through David's point of view. And so, yeah, again, I think I really enjoyed this book. Like, I really want to read the sequels more, but it's not a perfect book. And it's more than that. It's not a book for everyone. Like, you really have to be on its wavelength to enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed the way it was written, but I didn't actually find it funny most of the time, which I'm not sure how much you're supposed to or not.
Find it funny. I agree. I did end up enjoying it way more than I thought I would in the first 2. And again, I was on a plane and I was very sleepy. So I'm not going to throw that completely at the book's feet. But I've also listened to other books on a plane. So, maybe.
We should go into the synopsis,
yes.
rundown of the plot. So, how does this book start?
Okay, so this book starts. I think it starts with the epilogue, like when they're going into the. They get the call about the lady, the really cute girl, and David thinks it's someone John is trying to set him up with. And so this epilogue is completely unrelated to everything else in the plot, but what it lets you know immediately.
Do you mean prologue?
The prologue. Yes, sorry, I keep saying epilogue. It's the prologue. Sorry, guys. The prologue, it lets you know that we're dealing with supernatural things, and these two characters know about supernatural things. I don't like this as a beginning, and I will explain why, because it made the beginning of when the actual book starts really fucking weird to get into. And so it basically, you know that these two young guys get hired to deal with paranormal shit. They've got a shed of paranormal weapons to go fight things. This woman is like, I'm being my ex-boyfriend keeps harassing me. And they're like, well, that's not an us problem. Call the police. And she's like, but he died 2 weeks. And they're like, oh shit, let's get our stuff. And they go into her house, and she's like, he's in the basement. And they go into the basement, and then like they're talking, and David, who's our narrator, realizes that John has described this girl different from how he sees her, which is like he sees her as cute, petite, blonde with big old, like, help me eyes. And John sees her like way taller, more voluptuous, and then he realizes, oh shit, she's the paranormal thing. And then like as that happens, they get locked in the basement. They have to like fight their way out. It's real gross. There's a lot of gross shit that happens in this first scene, like chaos. They have to get out, and you learn here that music can like the paranormal things don't like music. You don't know why yet. You will learn that later. But and they have all of these weapons that they bring with them, and eventually they bust their way out of this. They end up dealing with the thing. They get out, and like that's where the prologue basically ends.
So Angry Otter has a good comment. He says, or they say, it's like he took one cool scene out of context and set it up the wrong story. I think this is, I think this is one of the legacies of serialization, in that if you're going to a blog, you're like, oh, this is an interesting kind of short story. I want to read more. Whereas for a book where you're already more committed just by nature of the fact that you bought the book, you would start with the interview, which is the next scene, and then the tension could ramp up more instead of just having this like James Bond opening, essentially, where it's just not really related to the plot.
And unfortunately, when it actually starts, because like I had the unfortunate thing of sleeping through the initial interview thing, and so I wake up and he doesn't know what any of the ghosts or like creepy paranormal stuff is, and I was like, but you just defeated a meat man. How do you not know? And so I
That's so funny.
Don't try read, because like it set up the entire beginning where you're like, oh, these are two men who know what they're dealing with. They're confident, and then you start the book and they're not. Nobody knows shit. They don't know shit, and I'm like. But what actually happens if you don't fall asleep is that you sit down to an interview where David is meeting this guy, something Arnie, for an interview. He's a reporter, and he wants to tell him his story about averting the end of the world and the paranormal and what he's been through, and he wants the world to know. And this guy's like, okay, all right, tell me your story. And so then we get book one.
Well, no. So the thing about it, and this is where we get an interesting part, is that John at this point is on a thing they call soy sauce throughout the book, which is like a drug where
but that's what, like part? I was
no. It's but that's in the that portion. You fell asleep.
No. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's after he has the interview and he starts telling the actual story, which is book one.
No, with the interview, he's on it.
No, he's not.
Yeah, again, you probably fell asleep for this part.
David is on it, not John. Yeah. You just said John.
Oh, sorry.
And so I thought you were talking about the phone call scene where
sorry.
No, you're for right. Some reason, David is on it.
I always mention the narrator as John, and because the book's not named after him, and I don't know why. So you guys are just gonna have to.
That makes sense. Sorry. No. He does the dream thing that the Jamaican does to him.
Right. So he's on soy sauce, and so it basically expands your mind so that you know everything pretty much. You can go through time, you can see different things. The way he proves to the interviewer that this is going to be an interesting thing is he tells him about a dream the interviewer had.
I need to specify something. I went through this 4 times. And on the 4th time, I actually listened to the whole thing through. So I know what happened, and that's why I knew Will was wrong and John was not on soy sauce during the prologue or the initial interview phase. I know what happened.
Well, he wasn't in the interview, but yes. Or like he tells him like, oh, there's 10 pennies in your pocket and they're for this in a year. And that's the soy sauce that's going to become an integral part of the first book.
Yes. And he basically does this to convince Arnie to take him seriously. It's his way, and he basically tells him a dream he's had. And it gets that guy to be like, Okay. So it starts off at an actual, like at a party, where David's gone to this party. There's this girl, Jennifer Lopez, not the real Jennifer Lopez, but someone named Jennifer Lopez who has a crush on, but she has a boyfriend named Tyler, and he has a convertible. And he grumpy. And he's there helping his friend John start up the set for his band. I forgot what the band is called, but the song that they open is called Camel Holocaust. And
So
David's
that's a
job,
good, yeah.
yeah, David's job is to come on stage, pretend he's the lead singer, pretend to die, and then John just comes out of the crowd and is like, I can play the guitar, and then they start the song. And while they're at this party, David has a weird interaction with this tall black guy with a terrible Jamaican accent. And like David is inordinately mad about this Jamaican accent. And basically, the Jamaican guy, so because what happens is he hears a bunch of girls screaming and they're like, oh my God, he levitated off the ground. And David's like, oh yeah, just some parlor tricks, just some like sleight
David
of hand
Blaine
guy. Yeah. And then the Jamaican's like, nah, if I do this thing right, you owe me a beer. And basically, like, he does a couple of things to prove himself, including like there's a whole centipede moment where he takes a centipede from behind David's ear and then he makes it disappear and he's like, where did the centipede go? And then there's a point like a couple scenes later where David has a stomach ache and I'm like, the centipede's in your tummy. But anyway,
this is not a book for people who don't like bugs, whatever that thing is called. There's a lot of bugs crawling in and out of people in this book.
It's so gross. I'm not big on that. That's not a thing. Like, I don't like
another reason that me and Katie would have jived with this book, but
this book was a lot for me. I'm a little squishy, squeamish baby, and so there were some scenes where I was like, who picked this? Why?
I did. It's funny because for me, like, again, I don't know if I mentioned, I really liked how he wrote the cosmic horror, but like I wasn't actually afraid of it because the character is not really afraid of it. A while ago, I read a book called The Deep by Nick Cutter, which was a horror book, and I read it almost pretty much in an evening. And that book also had sort of the problem where the main character isn't a character enough for it to be scary, but he's also not as jocular in tone as this book, so it works a little bit better, at least in terms of being depressing. Whereas this book kind of walks a fine tone line. But yeah, entomophobia. Yeah, I have thalassophobia, which is when you're scared of like animals underwater, which is awful, but go ahead.
The Jamaican basically says you have a dream where like your ex, it's something to do with his ex and like the fear of going back into the whole thing. And he's like, holy shit. And the Jamaican's like, you owe me a beer, man. And it's like, and somebody mentioned that it's like a Jamaican / Irish accent. It's like so off, it sounds like it's affected. And anyway, and so then he runs off because he's like, that was weird. I did not like that interaction. And then he ends up like leaving the party. And as he gets into his car, he puts his hand in his pocket and it burns. And when he takes it out, written on his hand is, you owe me a beer. And then he gets out of the car and he throws up and the centipede pops out. Then he goes to bed. Well, John is like, I'm gonna go to this bar with this cool Jamaican guy I met, and David's like, that guy seems weird. I don't like him, and he's like, David, you never like anyone. You're so judgmental. But Will, where did you go? Your screen's black. Will, did we lose Will, guys? Did we lose me? Am I the sole one in control, guys? I think we lost Will. I'm gonna continue. I don't know if I'm still live. Guys, say something. Am I live? Okay. All right. I'm still there. Phew. I can be in charge on my own. Okay, guys, what are we going to do? Will's not here. How are we going to take over the channel? No, that's silly. We're not going to do that. You've lost your will to live stream.
That's very funny. But you know what? Where there's a will, there's a way.
Oh, man.
One of my just leave Will. Yeah, hey guys, I'm back. If you're listening to this recording, I disappeared. I don't know what Maria said about me.
They know. I was like, well, where'd Will go? Am I by myself? Is it still? You're gonna watch it at some point, and you're gonna find it entertaining. Anyway,
I'm back.
to the thing. So yeah, John's decides to go.
Wait,
They're gonna go
I'm
to
on the
the.
other side of the screen now.
I know it's very
That's so.
frustrating. I don't like
That's.
it. I'm
I don't like it
normally on
either.
that. I'm normally on that side, but it's okay. We do what we must.
Oh, I did it. Tech
Yay!
genius. All right, go
um,
ahead.
so John decides to go. There's going to be an after party at this one bar. They all decide to go to this bar, and he's like, "You want to come?" And David's like, "No, we both have work tomorrow morning at Wally's video store. It's basically Blockbusters, and I'm going to go to bed." So he goes to sleep, and then in the middle of the night, John calls him and goes, says something to the effect of, "Oh my god, there's something in here with me. David, I need you to come over right now. Like, you need to come over right now. I'm trapped in my house, blah, 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 chaos." He starts getting ready. And then he gets another call from John being like, "Hey, have I called you already tonight?" And he's like, yeah. Or he's like, he thinks it's the first call. John thinks it's the first call. And he's like, "Don't come over. Whatever happens, don't come over. There's something weird happening. Don't come." And David's like, I'm on my way. And what are you saying? And basically what's going to happen is, for the next little bit, John is having a weird trip that I will describe in a moment, but he makes phone calls that appear at random points out of timeline for him into David's timeline. So David gets to the house. John is freaking the fuck out. David immediately thinks, rightly so, that he is on some weird ass drug and he is having a heart attack and going to die. And so he thinks he's overdosing and he's going to try help him. John is freaking out that there's something there that is trying to get at him. And at one point he's like, "David, don't move. Don't move. It's right behind you." And David's like, and there's nothing there. And John is freaked out. And eventually he is able.
Really quickly, and there's a part too where like John is like jumping around the room and he rolls off of the couch and there's like nothing there. This is one of those scenes that I think is conceptually this is a funny scene, and I think it's meant to be funny. And again, I could see how in a visual medium this would be funny, but I actually didn't find it that fun. Like it's pleasant humor, but I didn't find it funny. I wasn't laughing, and I think that's one of the places that's a good encapsulation of how this book tries to be funny, but actually isn't a lot of the time.
See, I found this scene creepy.
Oh, interesting. I thought it was supposed to be funny because like
No,
he's jumping around and you
I
can't see it.
believed John.
Oh,
I believed
I did too,
John.
but
so I was like, "Oh my god, what is David not seeing? What is David not seeing?" Because like we've just had a meat man. We literally
that's true.
The turkey-headed with the tongue meat man, and so I'm like, "What the fuck is David not seeing?" So I found this scene kind of creepy.
Very quickly, Celia has a wonderful comment, which is there is but one solution. She's talking about Maria being on her own without me. Now Maria just has to become ruggedly handsome. Yes. You have to become like Jane Rowland from Temeraire with the big ass scar.
Oh man. I don't know if I could pull off a scar. I think part of my appeal is that I'm kind of like baby faced and like
you know, the thing is, I don't know if Jane could actually pull it off in a visual medium anyway. You tend to forget that she has it, you know, like I don't think they ever even really mention it again.
Oh, I remember it all the time. It gives her character.
I don't really picture it, weirdly enough, but then I don't really picture her face almost at all. I don't know how that is, but yeah. So anyway, the next part, they get out of the house, and basically John is like kind of going a little bit crazy. Again, David thinks he's on a bad trip,
and David finds a syringe with this black stuff in it, and he's like, "What did you do?" So he throws him in the car, and he's like, "We're going to the hospital." And John's like, "Don't take me to the hospital. Take me to this other place." And David. And he calls this like the stupidest thing he's ever done. He doesn't take him to the hospital. He takes him. I think they go to a diner. Yeah.
Yeah, they go to a diner.
Yeah, they go to a diner because John is trying to explain everything. And while he's talking to John, he gets a phone call from John telling him that he has to go to Vegas. And he's like, "The fuck is happening?" And then the two of them go to work and they get arrested. And while they're arrested, and this is one of the ways I thought, they went to Denny's before when they were there, when they were talking and the phone call happened. And then they go to work. I can't go into this much detail. Okay, the basic premise, because there's three of these. The basic premise of this thing is that there's this infestation of weird buggy things that the Jamaican guy blows up at the party the night before, and these weird buggy things come out and infect this dude named Tyler. That guy is now the agent for whatever weird cosmic force is trying to get into the universe. And what they discover is that this thing is going to Vegas because there is this medium. What do you call
Guru
them?
type of like
Guru.
guy who
What's
wrote a
his name?
book.
Guys, what's
I
the
don't
name of the
I don't know, but I loved his voice because he has kind of like I don't know what it is, but like either a Jersey or a Brooklyn, like just that kind
No,
of.
I loved it. I loved
He was great.
his accent. But
And
anyway,
basically, John is still getting calls from, or no, David is still
David,
getting calls from John, but John is now in an ambulance with 4 other people who are the survivors of the party being taken
a
by
beer,
this demon guy.
a beer truck.
A beer truck, and the demon guy is called Shitload, who took over the body of one of their friends, and his body kind of
Tyler.
keeps throughout the first part of the book kind of falling apart. So at one point it's described as like he has 2 pale stalks from his eyeballs going out, like a snail's, and it's just
And then he has to
again.
like suck it back.
Yeah, oh, it's so good. The body horror in this is great. The other notable thing is that there is a policeman who is just like done with this shit, who he calls Morgan Freeman because he can't figure out
He
what his
doesn't know his
actual name
name.
is. He's just like a black guy. And he is like, he is an interesting character because he's a way of giving weight to what's going on, in that he is not jocular or a stoner dropout. He like, this is affecting him, and he tries to like burn down one of the houses because that this happened at, because he's like, this shit is just too weird. But Shitload, which is what the demon guy is called because he's a shitload of bugs, captures John and puts him in the beer truck with everyone, and they're going to
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
And the guy that they're going towards is basically doing a seance. And what they kind of put together is that whatever's going to happen at the seance, this guy is going to try bring through things or his god, so they have to try disrupt it. In this trailer, there are 4 people. I say 4 because 4 people, and I hold my thumb like this because something will be discovered later. But anyway, there is Jennifer Lopez, the girlfriend of the man who used to be Tyler, but is now a collection of bugs. Shitload. There is
Fred Chew, who's just a friend.
Fred Chew, who's just a guy they know. And there is Jim Sullivan, who they call Big Jim Sullivan, and you learn that David used to call his sister Cucumber because she threw up all of the time, and so he compared her to a sea cucumber, and so Jim doesn't super love David.
Yeah, what's also worth mentioning is that David and Amy, the guy's brother, were in a special ed school for like crazy people, because it's mentioned that, David did something really bad that we'll find out about halfway through the book in terms of backstory. And then the last person is John, who is catatonic for a while and then kind of comes out of it. And one of the interesting things about...
And Molly.
Oh, and Molly. We haven't mentioned Molly. Molly is a dog who keeps showing up throughout the book to help out and is just like a presence. And she dies at one point and then just comes back. And then we meet her human version at the very end, but it's not mentioned. And then you probably missed that part. I read some of the TV tropes page after this, so I think I know the plot a little bit better than I would if I had just listened to it, in terms of like the theories and stuff. And one of the things that's interesting about Tim as a character is he's again a way of giving weight.
Also fair warning, the last 29 minutes at double speed I did not listen to, so the last hour basically, because I ran out of time because my AC broke and I've been very busy.
I'm apparently the only one who cares about this podcast.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, the thing again about Tim is that he's another way of giving weight to the events while not breaking the jocular tone. The guy, Nick, the big guy, Jim. I can't remember names at all, guys. Because partly he's like a spiritual warrior. He interprets everything as being Christian, like God's will, and he's a stand-up dude. He's a good guy. And the fact that David kind of was like, oh shit, that guy's gonna beat me up if he ever figures out what I named his sister, as like a bully name. Yeah, Maria's cats, for audio listeners, are doing weird shit. Okay, so I've talked before about how you can try to characterize a character and make it so that them and like he's a very David is not just an audience stand-in. He is a person who you might not like at times and who has a very specific viewpoint that might change from yours. So like he kind of like came up with a nasty nickname for a girl in school, which is not a thing that like is great or you would have a character usually do. Um, and like you're kind of supposed to see Tim's side of things on this, and that's a way of again making the world feel more real and kind of helping with that distanced organic tone.
Tim. His name's Jim.
Look, there actually is
Jim
a Tim is the
Sullivan.
funny part, but we don't know about that till later.
Yeah. And the other thing about Jim Sullivan is he keeps making comments, and David keeps getting the idea that Jim knows way more than he is letting on. And it's something that you will find is very true as you get to the later books within this book. Anyway, so they're heading off to Vegas. They all decide, the four of them, that they're going to try attack the thing that they call shitload, that is a shitload of bugs. And they make bombs with
Molotov cocktails.
they make Molotov cocktails basically, but it doesn't work. It fails, and then they end up getting taken into a little house in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, sorry to break that down. I actually really liked that moment too, because they're all like, he's gonna come in and we're gonna throw them, and like none of them do it. Like Jennifer Lopez does it, but they all just freeze up, and it's like I love that moment of like, no, this is how real people would react. You're not heroes. You don't fight till the end and be scrappy. Like that's one of the things about this book is it's like it doesn't heroicize the characters. It's very clearly like these are two guys, and again, I think that more realistic actions help counteract the jocular tone.
It really is works well because and what David realizes, they were all waiting for him because it was kind of his idea, and so when Jen throws it, it just like hits the ground in front of, and like the light, the it being lit just goes out and it doesn't work. But anyway, the bag of bugs that used to be Tyler takes them to like a house thing. And there's a package there, and like we never find out what is actually supposed to happen there, but there's a package sent from John. And what you realize, oh, I have to explain something. There's this substance called soy sauce. Will talked about it. Soy sauce is this weird black stuff where if it is warm or room temp, is going to try to attack
insect,
you.
guys.
Yeah, it's this weird insect. And at one point it burrows in David's face. Great scene, good time. But anyway, it's the stuff that was in that syringe that David found on John. It is what the Jamaican guy was on to be able to do all of that weird stuff and put a centipede inside him. And it basically is a substance that opens up your mind to the entirety of the universe, different dimensions, time, and the ability to do things you shouldn't be able to do, like put a centipede in someone's tummy. Okay, so the Jamaican gave it to John. That's why John was freaking out doing all those weird phone calls that were happening at different times. And that's why he could see the weird thing that David couldn't see. Then David accidentally gets injected with a small amount in his leg from the syringe that John had, because the stuff has a mind of its own and it like kicked its way into him. He later goes to the Jamaican's house and finds some and ends up taking a massive amount. But so David and John have taken the stuff, which now makes them able to see things that they shouldn't be able to. I also think Jen, Chu, and Jim Sullivan. What's the first guy? Henry Chu. What was his name?
Fred Chu.
Fred Chu.
I don't know why I remembered that and not Tim.
Yeah, I exactly. I don't.
I don't know why that really stuck with me.
Or that Jennifer Lopez's name was actually Jennifer Lopez, and it wasn't just the author being funny.
There's a funny scene that like. Okay, it's mentioned that only from behind does she look like Jennifer Lopez, which is kind of gross. But there's a funny callback to that later when he thinks he's in bed with Jennifer Lopez, and then she turns towards him and he realizes it's not. And you only get that that's a joke because of the earlier scene.
Yeah.
The book is kind of clever at times like that.
But anyway, and all of these people, because they were at the party the night before that David didn't go to, have already been on the soy sauce. And the soy sauce, even after it has worked its way through your system, you can no longer do paranormal things or like control stuff, but you can still see things. It's like once the veil has been lifted, you don't have access to all the power, but you can still see some of the stuff. So while they're there, they get a package from John that previously Super Soy Sauce John sent to current John. And when Shitload realizes it's from John to John, he freaks out and he's like, open it, open it. And when they open it, it's just a letter that says, John, go look at the bush around the corner of the house. And Shitload's, I'm gonna go look at it and see what's there. And then the cop from earlier that was trying to that arrested them also tried to kill David. He shoots him and tries to burn a house on fire. David escapes. He's fine. Don't worry. Because we're here now. But anyway, that cop shows up and shoots Shitload in the face. Comes in, and basically, you find out that this cop has realized that something fucky is going on. He doesn't like what's going on, and he is determined to fix it. So he takes all of them, and they're heading to, because he knows as well that something weird is happening in Las Vegas, and that's the place where shit's going to go down. So he gets them all in the car, and they drive off to Las Vegas. And as he's talking to them at one point, telling them about how, like, he knows he has to stop this, there's something crazy going on, he explodes. And a bunch of the white things that infected infected Tyler and turned Tyler into Shitload just burst out of him. And they start trying to fly into everyone else. And I think they end up trying to fly into John or into David, but then they burn the stuff off of him.
Yeah, they try to go on his arm and he burns it off. And then Fred gets it and then comes back to life like zombie style. Not zombie style, but he comes back and pretends to be himself.
And he's like, hey, it's just me. It's just old Chew. And there's also this really funny part, like, and it's a tiny detail, but it comes back later, where Fred's like, if I die, I want someone to pretend they keep seeing my ghost so that, like,
I live like
on.
A legend.
Yeah, I become like Bigfoot or a cryptid kind of thing, and that ends up happening. Anyway, so David has the gun because Jennifer Lopez gave it to him earlier because somebody
understand that. She like just gave it to him so that he could be like the one to shoot. I don't know why she didn't do it.
I don't know. Apparently, Jennifer does not want to be the one to shoot people. But anyway, they are all looking at Fred's shoe. They know the things are inside him, except Jim Sullivan is like, no, it's fine. See, he's fine. It's still Fred. And then, but David blows off his head. And at first you're like, oh my God. And all the characters like, oh my God, this is terrible. Why would you do that? But then, like, the little bug comes out. And I was like, and they're like, oh yeah, no, he definitely was infected. This was the move. And then Jim and David get into a fight and they have to be pulled off of each other. But anyway, they get back on the road. They're driving. They get to Las Vegas. They get there. And also, the doctor's name was Marconi, Dr. Marconi. Yeah. And they get to the thing and they have to sneak in to the event. And it's this giant, like, seance thing in the Luxor, I think, the casino in Las Vegas that looks like a giant pyramid. I think it's the Luxor. I don't know. But anyway,
I'm a heathen. I don't know these things.
The one that looks like a pyramid. And so they sneak in by pretending to be support / part of
John like a band of weirdos.
It's
like
John an actual Elton. Band, but they look like it's insane.
Yeah, so funny.
It's so funny. And then they also find out that the couple that they stole a car from, they had in their suitcase like tickets, so they could have just gotten in. But anyway, so they get in and I'm trying to remember how it starts.
So they get in, what happens is they get in there and, like, basically everything goes to hell. The insects are there and they're eating through the crowd. And Dr. Marconi is like, I knew this was going to happen. Like, he's an old hand at this kind of thing. And again, he has like a Brooklyn accent. I don't know, Chicago, New Jersey, one of those like very American.
We're going to make certain regions of America very angry.
I can't remember because the narrative book audio. I would have liked it if the narrator had done it more than he did, because it's just like a hint, like really right there. It's like that thing where it kind of sounds like they're chewing their words a little bit. And basically things go to shit. They have to shoot a bunch of people. The insects are just eating through people, and
this
gross.
other thing is happening where a bunch of people are like losing limbs, and their limbs are like crawling towards. There's a big fountain in the middle of the room, and they're crawling towards the fountain and getting into it. The fountain starts turning weird. Dr. Marconi's like, there's an ice sculpture above this fountain. I'm going to turn it into holy water. So they have to get him there. This is also the moment where they learn that music and anything within harmony will upset the creatures, because there's these oh no, it's not the insects. It's the giant wig monsters with the hands. The baby-handed wig
Oh,
monsters.
you're right. Okay, so this is another thing that I didn't love, because being the holy thing actually works. Later they give like Presbyterian like mints to people to see if they're monsters or not, like with like little sayings on them. I don't love the way that the book has multiple forms of supernatural bad guys in it. This is just a thing that I always find messy. I like the weirdness to spring from one thing because you've got ghosts, you've got shadow men, you've got bug things, you've got actually another world that I'm blanking on. There's like 4 different like factions, and like when it's more weird and unexplained, I liked it more than like, oh, these are kind of demons or these are kind of ghosts.
But they're all related. They're all manufactured. Like those bug things were manufactured by that other world that Korok is in.
Right,
The
but the
I think
shadow
the
men aren't connected to that.
yes, they are. The shadow men are the people that have been trying to get through the other dimensions and lose their bodies, and now they're just shadows. They're
Right, but they're
Korok's
not
people.
from. Oh, I thought
Yes,
they were.
no, no, they're Korok's people. That's how they
Oh,
came
I thought
in.
they
That's
were
the whole.
allied with him.
No, no, no. They so what it is
Okay.
that Korok, when they opened the path from the other dimension, people tried to come through. And when they come through, and that's why David and John were so like cool in the third book because they were able to come through and keep their body. Everybody else who has tried to pass through different dimensions
Right.
just
Okay,
comes
you're
through
right.
as the black shadow people. And the wig monsters, I think, are also related because they listen to Tyler. So it's all.
Well, but and then the jellyfish guy though is also from a
No,
third.
no, no, no. He was created by the lab that created the like. You remember when they were walking through that lab
Yeah,
and
the
there was like
factory.
the boy? Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was created there. The fat guy knew him and was like, "You did this." Um, there's this. I'm sorry, guys. This makes no sense. We're gonna get there, but
It is
anyway.
actually kind of confusing. I think one of the reasons it's confusing is because there's a serialized nature to it
Yeah,
where it
don't worry,
didn't
I
quite
got it.
cohere.
Yeah, no, so that guy North was created in that factory. That's why the fat guy with the mask knew him and knew who he
Oh.
was. And that's why.
He just
And
went rogue.
yes, he did. That's the whole point. He was
Okay.
actively trying to help them, and that's why he killed fake Amy. So
That's
it's all related. That's the
spoiler.
thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's the thing is this author makes you think it's all unrelated, and then in that last thing, he was like, ha 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 ha, it's all neatly
Oh.
wrapped up, and that's why the mall keeps coming back because that's
But
connected
what
to
are
whatever that
ghosts then?
ghosts are just part of our world's paranormal.
Okay,
Like
see.
they're yeah. So
I think
so
that's
that's
why it
the only
confused me.
thing.
Is because I think what I thought was that there were ghosts, there were actual demons, which were the shadow people, and then there
No,
was the whole Korok thing, and then there was the jellyfish people. But you're right; those are all connected,
yeah. The only one that
or
isn't is
except the ghosts aren't. But yeah, the rest of it
yeah.
is.
The
Um,
rest of it is all Koroks.
Basically, big battle. Tim dies. Nick,
Jim.
Jim. And it's actually again, it's kind of sad because he says that like take care of Amy. He says to John, and David is like, John's not going to do that. And then we find out later on that John does actually take
This
care
do
of
it.
Amy.
That's so cute.
And the thing is, this part of the book works so well because everything has been building to this point. Yes, Marie's cat is very cute, guys, for audio listeners. That one's Pumpkin, right? Yeah. And again, the momentum of the book has been building to this point. The tension has been building, the excitement has been building, and it's really fun. Like it's just a fun scene. There's a part where John starts hitting people with a chair and he keeps making chair puns, and I did not love that part. Again, that's one of the parts where the book feels like it's trying to be funny or go out there and be like kind of absurdist, and it just doesn't really work for me. Um,
I did not understand. It felt like a pro wrestling in joke that I just didn't know. And so it felt like I don't know. I can't tell you.
Again,
But
I think it's trying to be funny and absurdist, and to me, it was just kind of like, okay, well, that happened.
and it was and so the other thing that's happening while all of this is happening is like we said those like people so there's this point where like they're trying to save this one woman and they think they saved her and then she rips off her own arm and then her arm goes like squitching towards the like pool. There's a whole holy water scene and basically what ends up happening is anyone who went into the pool disappears and no longer exists. Like just
And has
doesn't.
always never
Never
existed.
existed. So in that moment they turned to that guy and they said, "We're sorry about your wife." Because she's the one that ripped off her arm, and there he's like, "I don't have a wife. What are you talking about?" And It is in
One
the
of the
after.
reasons afterwards it's not seen as a massacre is because all the people who died never existed. And there's a part too where John thinks that actually there was a fifth member with them, but he fell into the pool. And throughout it, there's like deja vu moments of it throughout,
This
which
guy
is
named Todd, and it's just such a weird, like, it's such a chilling thing that, like, we just heard this story and there is an entire person missing from it because he went into the water. And it happens in a really cool way where the reporter he's telling was like, you said there was 5 people in the truck, but I counted only 4. And then you realize that was fucking Todd. He was
I
there.
wish a little bit more had been done with that because it's brought up and it's interesting, but it's not like that you feel his absence throughout the book. And I think that's because the book is a little bit scattershot and also like it's just throwing a lot of ideas at you all at once.
100.
Um, yeah, and then that ends the first arc of the book. That ends book 1.
Oh, yeah,
Book 2.
wait. The other thing that happens once all the people go in is a bunch of the Black Shadow people come out. So there's the weird monsters with baby hands and wigs on. They kind of all disappear, but then a bunch of these Black Shadow people come out and disperse into the thing. And they're like, I
Oh
wonder
no.
what they're going to do.
Yeah. And so we're not really going to talk about the plot of book 2 because it just isn't super relevant. Basically, they're Ghostbusters on a case for this
Yeah.
one like lady. Really what's important about book 2 in its function is it's about sort of the aftermath and the trauma of how John kind of adjusts to it, which is interesting because up until this point, the book has not been very book-like in terms of how it treats characters and it just doesn't feel book-like. It feels very much just John's voice. And here it
David.
starts trying to put in sorry guys, David. And it starts trying to put in more of like the actual moves that a book would have. But the tension has been broken. And like again, if this was another book, you would be like, okay, this is the part where we recap and we build up the tension and the plot lines that are continue into this book too. But you're actually just kind of like, oh, I'm a little bit bored. Like that first part was so interesting. And now just by virtue of the medium, I'm not as quite interested now.
Yeah. The important thing that you take away from this is that the shadow people are here and the shadow people can take over people's bodies and you become trapped in your own body while somebody else is taking control of you. There is a news anchor, a sports news anchor, who is having this happen to him. The scariest part, there's 2 scary scenes in this. If you don't like bugs, the cockroach scene. If you are just a human, the scene where they're watching they go to the sports anchor's house guy to like kind of confront him, and they're watching a video of him talking, and then like the guy walks into a different room, they come in, they see themselves on camera walking by, they walk into another room, and then they see the guy they came to see crawl across the ceiling and leave through the front door, and you're like,
Gross.
super, that's terrible. It's just that like that one, like there's no monster or anything, it's just a man crawling across the ceiling, and it's way worse. But anyway, and that's the really important thing to kind of take away from this. Also, there's weird stuff in the mall, and the mall also starts functioning like a video game, where like ammo and weapons pop out of boxes.
Yeah, that was really funny. And John is like, okay, in the next room, there's going to be a boss, so we got to be cool. And it's like, very specifically, I thought it was like a Resident Evil callback, but it's also kind of a Doom callback, also in that, or just like a callback to that era where there's like different key cards for different colored doors and stuff like that. Some comments. Angry Otter said, or no, you're first. Ice Willow said, I thought the chair thing worked really well for John's character of think he's cool and funny, but is just being an idiot. It didn't quite click for me. I sense the intentionality of it, but I that may be your mileage may vary kind of a thing. Angry Otter said, I was complaining about the lack of emotionality in the Discord. Yeah, again, toward the second half of the book kind of tries to do more with that. And there's actually sort of a fridge logic in terms of why John kind of becomes more of a book character with more interiority. But
are
like,
you actually talking about John, or are you talking about David? Because I can't tell.
I'm sorry, David again. I don't know why I think John was the main character. I keep doing this, guys.
Because I can't tell. Sometimes I'm like, is he actually talking about John?
Some of the ideas in the book feel like they're never fully realized, not even towards the end when we get the big explanation. Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
100%.
And again, the main thing here is that like after the big fight or whatever, John and like Jennifer Lopez started dating, but their relationship just kind of falls apart. Again, she's not really a character, but it shows what's going on with John and that he can't really handle.
David.
And the thing is, David, and that she wants to kind of forget what happened, whereas David is a little bit more, he's haunted by what happens and he can see these things still, so he can't quite forget them. And then you have John, actual John, who wants to kind of push forward into seeing more of these weird things because he's kind of likes the adrenaline high. This is also a good point, a good part to talk about the way the book treats women, which is like not great. Like again, it kind of it's mitigated a little bit by you are through John's viewpoint, and he like just talks about how he's hormonal at times, and so like he'll just look at women or think they're hot and stuff like that.
David.
David. So there's a point where actual John is dating this girl called Marcy, and they're in a diner, and all he can think about are Marcy's boobs. And then there is another point where they're helping out the reporter's girlfriend, and like most of what she is just hot in David's head. I'm getting better. I'm gonna do it.
I'm so proud of you.
And even Amy, who's in the last third of the book, is a little bit more realized as a character, but like not completely. But again, some of this is David's viewpoint.
I found her pretty realized. Like I had a really solid idea of who she was, partially just from the description of her bedroom, her chat logs, and like her hobbies.
That's true.
Stuff.
She is a well-sketched character, but she also mostly functions to be his love interest. And to be kind of his tie to the world. So like it's not terrible.
It's not great. It is true. It's
not great. It's not terrible, but also if you find David's viewpoint of being very hormonal as annoying, or don't buy into it being a character choice and buy into it as an author choice, I could see how that's off-putting to people.
Absolutely. The other important thing that happens in this section is Molly, the dog, goes crazy, and when they interact with her, she has this weird symbol on the bottom of her paw
that looks like pie,
but like a tilted pie like this.
Ooh.
And she says something before she gets killed when she's being all weird and possessed. That is, I serve none but Korak, and they've never heard this word, and they're like, who the fuck is Korak? And it's basically the name given for this experience that David has at the end of book 1, where he like something happens and he kind of slips into another dimension, and he's in a black space with a giant blue eye, like an electric blue eye, just staring at him, and he runs out. And this is a very straightforward symbolism of whatever is doing this has noticed him. He's now on its radar. Anyway, its name is Korak. It got Molly, and then they end up killing Molly.
Him.
It don't like David. They end up killing Molly by feeding her one of those little mints or like candies from like the religious people with Bible verses on it. And Molly explodes. So you get introduced to the symbol. You get introduced to the name Korak. There's also a part where Korak takes over a bunch of cockroaches and talks to David about like him dying terribly, and like how humanity is a bunch of cockroaches on the planet, and how we need to be dealt with and controlled and crushed.
It was, I actually really liked that part, the way that the cosmic horror sees humans, and they're like, you're just gross, like you're eating each other all the time. How do you deal with dying all the time? Yeah, like you're kind of gross. And again, this is where the book kind of hints at bigger conceptual ideas, and I think the cosmic horror actually works pretty well. And again, the book is a little bit deeper than it seems on the surface, but it mostly brings up these concepts, but then doesn't fully explore them through the plot or the characters. It does a little bit. Some comments. Angry Otter says the book should have been called David Dies at the End, because that would make sense. Yes, thank you. I don't understand that at all.
I don't know why it's called John Dies at the End.
He also says, I reiterate, I'm just glad there was no sex or essay. There actually is, but it's just kind of subtle. And then Lindbergh says the women are very much used as devices for the story and for David to stare at. Yeah, that's exactly it. And again, 100%. That kind of just ties into how much you buy into this being David's viewpoint versus just being the author wanting to write women this way, which, if you've read the Dresden Files, is more of a problem when you're not in the main character's viewpoint as solidly. That's actually an interesting difference in that the Dresden Files, which are like a supernatural detective type thing, are written in first person, but the first person could just have been switched to third person. It's more of that kind of a thing. I mean, it does have some voice more so than like contemporary YA tends to, but this book has even more. And so to me, it felt even more like, oh, okay, this is more entrenched in how the character would see the world. I'm reading through it. Lindbergh says, I can only imagine how unbearable the sex scenes would be at Angry Otter. Yeah, that would actually be pretty. Those would have been weird and funny or not funny. But it kind of makes sense, too, in that, like, David doesn't really want to go into that. And that's pretty much it for book 2, right?
Yeah, so those are the important parts, basically the stuff I just mentioned. And that the mall has whatever is happening, the mall is involved. The Jamaican guy from the beginning was squatting at the mall, so stuff is happening at the mall. It has a lot of
the
weird
character
rooms.
arc too is that at the beginning, David sees Ronald McDonald clown with his guts falling out, and he's grossed up by it and leaves. And then by the end of the arc, he has accepted those weird supernatural things in his life, so he eats a hamburger while looking at him, and that's or a bratwurst, which is symbolic of him taking on and being more ready to deal with this.
Yeah, and it's basically the start of him and John becoming the Ghostbusters.
The Ghostbusters.
Of their area. Book 3. Better than book 2, I promise. We didn't even describe book 2. We just told you the important parts.
It's not important.
So book 3 is kind of one of the things I will say is it does feel a little bit disjointed. So at the start of book 3, Jen has fully left David, and it starts with him having a lapse in his memory where he thinks he's come home from work and he's inside his house, and he realizes he doesn't remember walking from the front door coming inside the house, and he kind of like backpedals and like looks out the window, like goes in, and he sees footprints going all the way around his house, and he has his gun. He also had a weird like dream like experience. But anyway, he's got his gun and he like counts the bullets, and there's a bullet missing from his gun. And he's looking at all the footsteps and everything, and I think it's not now, but he gets the idea that something weird has happened that he doesn't remember it. And then he gets a call from John while he's freaking out about this, and John's like, yo, you have to come to Amy's house. Something weird is happening. Amy's missing. And he's like, who the fuck is Amy? And he's like, Amy Sullivan, Jim Sullivan's. And the problem, the joke here is that this entire time for book 1 and 2, David has not known Jim Sullivan's sister's actual name. He's just continued to call her Cucumber. Now, he hoped at a certain point Jim would say Amy's name so he would know what it was and he could stop referring to her in his head as Cucumber, but it didn't happen. So sorry. So he ends up going to the house, and basically what has happened is John's uncle is a cop named Drake, and that's who called them in book 2 to look into the weird stuff that was happening there. And he was like, hey, weird things are happening, come look. So they go in, and Amy is missing. There is a weird jellyfish creature in one of the rooms making love to a light, and there's a bag of fat, 40 something kilograms of fat just in the bathroom. There was water running, and Amy's just completely missing. Where did she go? We don't know. And he's like, oh my God, I have an hour or half an hour worth of gapped memories in my brain that I cannot remember. And there is a bullet missing in my gun. Did I somehow come here and kill Amy? And then he ends up asking to go back to his house. He goes in the shed because there was footprints leading to the shed, and he sees a tarp with a hand sticking out, and he's like, oh my God, I have killed someone.
And the thing about it is that I actually really liked how the internal conflict here is handled, because David is not the best person. He's not immediately going to be noble, and he's not a piece of shit. He's not going to immediately not be. So there's like this very like almost realistic way of thinking of like, I don't want to go to prison forever, but also maybe my dad can get me off, but also it's the right thing to do. And like the struggle there makes him, again, David, for all his jocularity and frat boy humor, is like a real person in an ugly way. And again, I think that's one of the reasons the book kind of works, is because you are treated to that thought process throughout the book, even if it's a little bit odd at times, or a little bit veiled at times.
Yes, and I completely agree. It was one of his conflict in this book is one of the things that made him feel the most human, and it's hysterical when you get to the end and you realize the plot
Why in
twist.
the last third, he's kind of different than he was in the first two. I also will say this part was kind of atmospheric with all the snow coming down and stuff in
Oh
the
my
dark, and him
god.
thinking he murdered someone.
Yeah, it's so great. Anyway, so he realizes he did murder someone. He thinks it's Amy. He goes back to the house to tell John that he has murdered someone. And then Amy's there, but she doesn't have a hand, and he's real freaked out because he saw fingers in his. And he was like, "What is?" And then he ends up like John explains, like, "Yeah, no, she doesn't have a hand. She hasn't had a hand since the operation after the accident." He David scares the crap out of Amy because he's just roaming. They've never
With
seen
a
each
gun.
other. Yeah, with a gun, and she's like in the bathroom, like with the door locked, and he's like, "Amy, thank God you're here," and she's like, That's fine. Yep, I'm here. You can leave now. Please go."
I thought what was happening with Amy's hand was that it was one of those things that got erased, in that she had his original memory of it was her having a hand, and then at some point it had been
Oh,
retconned that she didn't. But I don't think so, because later she explains that actually she was in an accident, and then years later they cut off her hand because it was so painful.
yep.
But I'm not actually sure if that's how it works. What we find out is that Amy has been losing time. At midnight, she kind of can't remember what happened for a couple of hours. And so John has like an important construction job to go to, so he makes David stay to watch her. And like, it's cute. This is where they start like kind of interacting more a little bit, though it's funny because he mostly just wants Amy to stop talking to him, and so he makes monosyllabic
She's
answers.
trying really hard. And
Uh-huh.
she cleaned up a little bit and she did her hair because she knew David was going to be spending the night. And I'm just like, Amy, you have literally interacted with no humans for the past 3 years or 2 years, my girl. Like, calm down.
Yeah, it's kind of, again, Amy is a well sketched character. But I don't know. I felt like she didn't have a lot of agency. So she's
And
well
again,
sketched.
she feels like a device for
Yeah, like
David.
Lindbergh said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for
entirely
that.
it.
And to be fair, I don't know that any of the characters in the book feel, John is maybe the only one. I mean, John has a lot of agency, because he does move a lot of the plot. And some of the other characters, even minor ones. I mean, okay, yeah, Amy is a well sketched character, but she doesn't have a lot of agency. Whereas other characters are not as well sketched, but do have agency.
So they're sitting there and they're waiting for 12. He's kind of freaking out about it. And he makes her come sit on the couch. Oh, really quick. This thing has been happening where he has been noticing people watching him. Like there's this point where he looks at his TV and there's a man watching him, but the man's face is weird. It's like off. He describes it like a Michael Jackson face or like somebody wearing a
Which is
mask, but
so
not as bad as
funny.
it's so bad, but not as bad as like like the guy from Halloween's mask. And then the guy just like it disappears. And while he is at Amy's, waiting for it to become 12 for the period where Amy loses her time, he sees someone watching from the fucking TV again. And he realizes whoever's watching him, Amy is also being watched. So whatever is happening is connected. Like it's not like it's a separate paranormal event. Whatever is going on with David is connected to here. Um, and yeah, so they're sitting there, and then like 12:07 hits, and this thing happens where suddenly instead of Amy, it's a dummy wearing red hair. And then all of a sudden he blinks again. Amy is back, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And they both are like, "Oh shit. What happened?" So they rush out of the house. They get into the car, they start running. But then they look up on the roof of the house, and it's one of the black shadow men. That was at the end of book one that was possessing people in book two, and they're like, "Oh no, black shadow men." So they start driving, and then
They have like a
something
fight with them, and
yeah, the
there's a truck
shadows
that goes
yeah,
out, or
Oh yeah, there's this shadow that there's a truck that jackknifes, and then the people come out of the truck, and like this one guy kind of explodes, and then there's this one like it's gross. It's a gross scene, but anyway, they end up running, and she sees a lit parking lot, and she's like, go into the light. They can't get us into the light, so they go in. They end up having a very deep conversation about like why he's like, please hold this gun and point it at me. You don't have to worry about, because he basically says like they can control us, and she's like, well, if they come into me, and he goes, no, 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 you're a better person than I am. It's a nice conversation, and it also is the first time in the last third of the book that we get the origin story about what happened with that one kid during high school and why he had to go to a high school for special people.
Which is basically the guy, some bullies assaulted him and then he murdered one of them. Or no, he didn't murder them. He clawed out his eyes, and then the guy later committed suicide. And so he's like, I'm not a good person. I'm like, I'm dangerous, which it didn't really quite match the first third of the book, which again, I get that there's a reason for that.
I don't think it was him saying he's dangerous. I think it was him saying that in moments like that where he has that, he's going to make like, because he makes good decisions and he acknowledges that, but in those moments where something has affected him to the point, like he will make the bad decision. And that's the thing, is he on his own already has the ability to make the bad decision, but Amy doesn't.
And also Amy sells some of her backstory, and again, this is a weirdly atmospheric part where they're cold in the car, and you can sense like the one lone light as the snow is around it. And again, this is where the book is more bookish, or more traditional, and I think it's a good transition because the book kind of needed to get that depth. But again, maybe it should have done that back at the beginning of part 2, but whatever. Amy is very into him, and then after that, John shows up. Some stuff had happened with him, and then not important. Some guys make fun of Amy, and John goes like, or David goes like protection mode, which again, it's cute and it's more bookish than you would expect. And again, but I don't know, that felt a little to me. Again, the David that's in the last third just feels different than the David in the first 2 thirds, which again, we'll talk about, kind of makes sense. But as reading it, I was like, this is a little bit like I thought it was an artifact of the serialization, in that he could just kind of changed how he was writing him midway through, but didn't go back to change the first third or the first 2 thirds to match the last third. Basically after this, they just decide to go on a mission, right?
Yeah, so they go back to David's house. They decide they're going to go to basically what John had been up to was he put together that a bunch of things lead to doors in the mall. He had gone to the mall. There was this weird door that he could only see out of the corner of his eye. He couldn't see straight on. So they go to David's house. They get supplies. They make a flamethrower. They get a chainsaw. They have their boombox for the musics. And then Amy's like, I'm coming. And David's like, no. Do not come. You're very good. I don't want you to die. And she's like, oh, well, I am doing a heckin' come. And so they end up going. Amy is able to see the paranormal things when she wears these Scooby-Doo glasses that somebody mailed.
I love that people just keep mailing him stuff, and sometimes it's useful and sometimes it's not.
It's just not. And so Chrissy, the girl from book 2, ends up mailing him a gold cross. And they end up like suiting up. They go in, and there's this point where they're going in the door, and like he's like, if anything goes wrong, I need you to run out, get yourself a cab, go to my house, like get out, Amy. Because at this point they have done the do. They've been off-screenly intimate with each other. And he's like, there's a point where he literally feels himself fall in love with her, and it's described very adorably. And he's like, oh God. But anyway.
Yeah, so, he does the whole like, you're too valuable to me to lose type of a thing, the more traditional.
So they go through the door. While they're in the door, a monster comes through. Amy runs in the opposite direction. They don't know what happened to her, but they haven't gone through the portal yet. They end up just going through, like, there's an elevator that takes them up, and they're like, the mall is only 1 story tall. And it's like, there are these weird blind people who are bald in lab coats, and it's this weird factory where they're making like weird like cross animal things, but also at one point they see a little boy with blue eyes staring at them, and then the little light goes off next to his cage and he turns into a pig, pig stuff comes back.
Not like Snap turns into a pig, like body morphing turns into a like body running. Yeah, again, there's some great body horror in this.
Yeah. Not great. Anyway, and so they're going through, and then North shows up. Like they end up escaping something.
We haven't
Oh God,
explained
we
who
haven't
North is.
talked about North at all. I think his name is John North. No, I
Yeah,
forgot what it's something
Tim.
North. But anyway, uh, North is a character who showed up during one of the scenes earlier where David was going back to his house from Amy's house, and a weird thing like was keeping him sedate. And North was in the back, and North has this real weird stilted way of speaking. Doesn't understand like sarcasm too well, and has this like childlike wonder at things that are happening. And he pops up a couple times and interacts with David. There's this one point where he makes, in what David thinks is a dream, he makes David eat this weird spider thing. And then David wakes up and he's in a chair and he's fine. But he keeps popping up, and you're like, who the heck is North, and how does he connect to all of this? Well, North was created in one of these factories. And he's only been alive for a couple of months, and that's why a lot of things are super fascinating. But he also knows whatever is happening is super fucked up, and that David and John are a key for things to not go the way they are planned to go. And so he's been trying to, while being creepy as hell, help David. And so basically they end up at in this empty room with this big black portal thing that's kind of moving and stuff. And North is like, the only way for you to save Amy is to go through that portal. They've been trying, like they have been trying to get people to go through the portal properly for ages. But you guys can do it, so you have to go through. And David's like, but there's no wand. So they end up going through, and then they're in the weird world. Go, William.
Okay, and then in the weird world, they are greeted by a committee of naked people with like weird masks on, and they're like, "Our clothes we thought would break your mind, so we're not wearing them." And he's like, "Oh no, a lot of them are old." It took me a second to get, but I thought it was kind of funny.
That is such, and the thing is, it's such a you comment. I literally was like,
it is.
I literally was like, this is the most, besides the Marcy Denny scene.
Rude, first of all. Second of all, yeah, no, again, this book kind of like, I'm not David, but it kind of jives with that culture of the time period.
Humor.
So yeah, that humor. And there's pictures of him and John, or not pictures, there's statues of him and John looking really heroic. And the guy's like, for a long time, we've been trying to go to your world, and you two are the first to be able to do it, which was the Shadow Man we were talking about earlier. And we find out, and the guy tells us like very happily and gleefully that in that world, some guy from the Civil War didn't die, and he created biological machines essentially. So like at one point, I think David is hurt, and they give him a cat that just like purrs, and he's like, "I did feel better. That was weird." But mostly it's gross insect stuff, except for a pig brain that he is able to make, the inventor guy, before he dies. And they see it, and it's just like a bunch of weird things, and that over time grew and grew and grew until it became Korok, who is now the size of the Statue of Liberty and is just a bunch of flesh and brain matter, with an eye, a single Sauron blue eye. And that was pretty great. And the thing about it is, it's interesting because this is again where the book hints at like stuff it doesn't really go into, where the guy talks about how their morality is different, because if Korok is the ultimate intelligence, then he has the ultimate knowledge of how things in the future will pan out. Like if taking someone's gun now, that's not theft, because they might use it to hurt someone, or they might kill someone who then would cure cancer. Interesting idea in terms of like, if you had the ability to build a computer who could see all of the future, then you could have that computer be your god. And then Dave has a mental connection with Korok and figures out that Korok is just like, he has a baby voice and he's very gross. And he's like, "Hey, I thought your wiener would be bigger," and it's not. And like they just trade like dumb insults, which is like, it's a funny inversion, though again, it doesn't quite click for me in terms of the tone.
I didn't love it. I did love the idea that world and our world had been exactly the same up until that point. That one guy not dying was the diversion point that created these two separate universes. And basically, Korok is trying to expand into other planes of existence, other dimensions, and he has slowly been doing this with other worlds, other places. And there's a point where he says, of the billions of universes, I control half of them. And so he's trying to get, and our world in particular is pretty special to them because it is literally the sister like one. And they've been trying to get in, and they've already have people in our world helping them, building those factories, doing this thing.
The shadow men have been able to like possess people to do stuff.
Yeah.
And so, and again, because they can also send bugs to control people, like, and it's very cool. And so the other thing is that, and again, Dave and
Oh no.
John had built a bomb that they were going to use to destroy this thing, but then they hit it to look like a dog bone, and then Molly ate it. So they're kind of hoping that Molly will poop out the bomb so that they can use it.
They also fed her 2 giant burritos in the hopes of
To
giving her
try to get it to come
diarrhea
out.
to
Yeah.
make it come out.
Talking about pets. Maria's cat. Very cute. Very about an
Heckin'
ambulatory rug. And in this scene, they get captured. They see Amy. The guys implant the evil guys implant her with like insects
One
that
of
are going to
those
burst
bugs.
out. Yeah, and create like a plague swarm of them essentially. And then Molly does do explode, not with an
She doesn't
explosion.
explode.
She
Yeah. Oh,
explodes with Brown. Again, it's
and
whatever.
the bone bomb comes out,
Comes
and
out,
John lights it.
lights it, and they blow up Korok and escape back into
Did they
our
actually
universe.
blow up Korok, or
I
just I thought they just blew up that room.
I think they blow up that room. I think you're right. I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah. I don't think
I
they.
watched a summary of the movie, and I think I'm getting that confused with it. There is a movie to
Yeah.
this, by the way, which just doesn't seem as delightful as the book. Like it seems to just miss a lot of the things that the book did well. And then Tom North
Good, good. Look at
North
you.
shoots.
I couldn't even tell who you were trying to reference, which is why I couldn't help. I was like, Tim's dead. Jim died ages ago.
Tom was never actually real. Yeah, no. So he shoots Amy and pushes her back into the portal. So that the insects are like unleashed on the people on the other side. And that and then
And David
Dave
gets super
kills him.
pissed, and he kills him. He melts and turns into that jellyfish thing that was
That they
floating
saw at
around at
Amy's
the top.
house.
And so that was him.
That was him the whole time.
And so they're really upset. They end up getting out. They drive. They end up. They have this weird thing. There's this weird conversation where they're like just walking through the snow, and then somebody with the truck comes up and picks them up, and he thinks it's the lead singer for this one band that has come up multiple times in the book.
Oh yeah, Fred Durst.
Yes, something like that. Anyway,
that's Molly, by the way.
That's Molly?
Because he says he's dogged their steps from the beginning.
What?
Yeah, I read a theory on it, and that's kind of considered to be whatever. Molly isn't dead, by the way. She'll come back by the end of the book. And so we should probably skip over to the part. No. Okay, yeah. They get back to their house, and they see David's house. And they see that Amy is there, but she's in the shed, and she looks shocked to see them. And it ends up that basically Amy that the guy killed and pushed into the other world was like a meat puppet to try to get the insects into this world, because they knew that John and David wouldn't leave her in that world, and they would take her through. And they were the only ones who had the ability to do that. Which is like, oh, that's actually kind of an interest. Like the plot actually tracks, like it doesn't fall apart from logic.
And it makes sense why they kept abducting Amy to be able to do this thing. And
what
Amy
they
herself.
Find,
oh yeah, go.
No. So remember, I don't know if we've mentioned this, but the clones they make of people in this world, from that world to this one, have the pie symbol on them. And at this point, they're like, okay, Amy, like, show us your foot, see if it's on there, and it's not. And so she says, though, the person in the tarp is David. It looks like him. And so David's like, oh my gosh, the person that I killed, because he never really went into the shed. He just kind of blacked it out from his mind from the beginning of that point.
He just saw fingers poking out.
Yeah, and he was like, oh, okay, thank God I had murdered the clone who tried to copy me and take over my life. And he goes in there and he looks for the mark on the body and he doesn't find it.
There's no mark on the feet.
And then he looks at his and it's there. So since the beginning of book 3, which is again when he started to kind of like change as a character, it's actually been Monster Dave is what they call him. It's been a clone, but like the clone basically just kind of was such a close clone of Dave that it just kind of kept doing the things he did instead of it's never actually quite explained why that's the case. And it actually goes back to the ship of Theseus, which is mentioned at the beginning of the book, which is that if you have an axe and you replace the head of the axe, and then the axe handle breaks and you replace the handle, is it the same axe? That's the whole ship of Theseus thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if it isn't, then at what point? So it's like, okay, is he the same Dave or not? And so that's kind of like what he's been grappling with in the background.
All the same memories. Yeah, it's so good. I really liked that twist, and I liked how he had set that up with the axe bit in the beginning. I thought it was a really good tie-in.
And again, this is why it should be called Dave dies at the end, not John.
It should. I don't. John doesn't die at the end.
Supposedly he dies at the beginning, but I don't think that actually happened. I read in the TV tropes you're right. He does actually die. He isn't replaced with a copy though. You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but basically, there's some like emotional fallout. But John actually like accepts him pretty quickly, and Amy also accepts him pretty quickly.
They do this thing where that cross that Chrissy from book 2 mailed, they touch him with it, and it ends up poking him in the eye, so it hurts, but he's fine. He doesn't explode or anything. So at first, John is like, "Ha! I'm going to kill," and then she's like, "No, I poked him in the eye. That's the whole reason." And she freaks out a little bit, but they end up like calming down, and there's this kind of sweet moment where John and her are talking, and you think they're suspicious of him and they're going to do something, but you actually find out that they just took away all of his medications and anything he could use to kill himself, because they know, like, it's monster David, but they also know David well enough where if it's a good copy of David, that's probably something he would consider. And basically they have a conversation where she's like, "Let's leave. Like, what are we going to do? Let's just leave. We'll all leave. Let's go." And he's like, "It's not that easy for John and I. We have jobs. We have stuff we have to do." And he was like, "But you can leave. You can leave tomorrow." And she goes, "Well, I do have some 2 lesbian friends in Utah I could go try and hang out with." And so he takes her and he puts her on a like, she gets on, they hang out for a little bit while she gets her
because the whole thing is that he doesn't think he can leave because like they know even though Korok is gone, like they're still watching him.
He's under the eye.
He can never be normal again, Spider-Man style, but he wants her to be safe and not part of this world. And so they put her on a plane to Utah, and it's very cute. And then we switch back to the Frame story. So this whole time he's been talking to the reporter, and the reporter's for a while been like, "This is not a real story, and if it is, you just admitted to murdering a lot of people." So he's taken him to the mall to show him the body of Dave. And it's actually an interesting scene, because one of the reasons the reporter had come to see him was because he, before a month ago, doesn't remember video games existing. Like, because again, people, when things are retroactively added or removed, people have like deja vu about it for a little bit. And so he's like, and it's bizarre that we're teaching people to be desensitized to killing other people in games. Like, that's such a bizarre idea. It must have been changed from earlier on, and I don't remember it. We need to tell the public about this. And Dave's like, it's not going to change anything. Like, being a hero is not about that. When I put Amy on that plane, I had a dream that but the Shadowmen showed me that they could have blown up the plane she was on, and not just at that moment, but for all of time. And anytime in the future, they can go back and do that. And so, heroes are the ones who are willing to give it all away, to really like sacrifice everything. And I'm not. I have Amy now. That's my one Achilles heel now. I used to not care, and now I do. And so again, looking at kind of considering, or at least touching on bigger moral topics. And then he goes, "Okay, but I have a sample of the soy sauce. Take this to a lab, have them look at it. That may actually get out and change people's minds." And the reporter goes, "Okay, I've been doing this forever. I remember in a civil rights protest, that I was covering, a guy pushed me down and said, 'Stay down, N-word.'" And John is like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, what do you mean?" And he's like, "Okay, describe yourself." Because this whole time, he's thought that this guy is a white guy. And it ends up that this whole time he was a ghost, that the Shadow Men had killed him and put him in his own trunk. And so this whole time, he's just been talking to a ghost. And the guy is not happy about it, and then just fades away. Which kind of is like, yeah, it's kind of futile. They have, they really do control like everything.
Everything.
And so after that point, this is the point where Maria stopped reading, so I'll describe it. Hands. Notice my camera has more chill. Basically, after a while passes and Amy comes back and she like is like, look, I don't care. I don't think you're gonna turn on me. You know, I'm committed to doing this. And so they live together for a little while, but then him and John are able to convince her to go to a nearby college and stay in the dorm there. And he's like, look, she's gonna figure out she can have a normal life. Guys are gonna find out she's hot, even though she only has one hand. And like he's like, okay, I gotta let her go. Gotta let her go. And then she's like right before he's going to turn around and leave, she's like, we should get married. And he's like, okay. And he just kind of accepts it. And then the next scene is that him and John are playing football, and then, or not football, basketball. And a black hole to another world opens in there. And John kind of just goes in because he wants to see what's going on there. And also, like, the temperature is better over there. And they keep playing. And that's like another dystopia. But by this point, guys, they're jaded. They're so used to this end of the world crap. It doesn't matter to them. So when somebody tells a group of people come up and are like, you guys are the chosen ones who were supposed to save our world. And they're like, okay, but to save your world, we have to get some stuff from our world. And then they go back to their world and just keep playing basketball because, you know, again, they're done with this crap, guys. And then 4 kids come in and go into the thing, the portal, and they come back and they're like, all that time, and it was just a moment here. And the implication is that they saved the world. And John and Dave are like, yeah, whatever. And then the book ends. And so like that part felt a little bit, again, it doesn't quite click. It's a little too genre savvy, but I get where he was going with it. And so that's kind of one of the things about this book is I'm really excited to read the sequels because those were written more cohesively and they're not as episodic. And you know,
they're not serialized,
yeah. And so I think that I'm interested to see what the author can do when he actually flexes his muscles and has an ability to make things more cohesive and maybe look at things more instead of just kind of bringing them up. And like, you know, I get people who don't like the book, but it really clicked. Well, as much as I talked about how certain things don't click, I jived with it. I was on the same wavelength.
I did end up enjoying it. You know, like it was pretty good. I do very much want to read the sequels because I just want to see what it would look like if it was unified, you know, like what the not serialized version would be. And also because I want to see how this fucking ends, man. How do things go down with Korok? Like how are we going?
Oh, that's the other thing I didn't tell you. What? He's watching TV at one point and he sees through the TV that the Shadowmen are you know, the guys from the other world that he saw watching them with the weird faces, which is from Korok's world, is watching him, but he's trying to get in through the TV because there's just a swarm of insects.
I remember that.
And yeah, and it eats him, and the implication is that world got eaten by all the insects. So I don't even know if Korok is still alive, but he's definitely alive in other multiverses.
Good. Now, wait, there was one thing I was going to say that we didn't touch on, but now I've forgotten it.
You'll remember before the end. I have faith. And so, you know, again, I think the book does a lot of smart things under the surface of its jocularity to actually make it tick. Structure-wise, there's a problem, but again, those are could be fragments of the serialized nature of it. So I'm excited. We'll probably end up doing it as a non book club book because like we like to do sequels all at once if we're gonna do them. And this has 4 books in total, so we'd have to do 3 books for mid-month book, and that's a lot. So we'll probably just do it on our own. I don't know if they're longer or not. They may be.
I hope not. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, Lindbergh says the whole epilogue did not need to happen, in my opinion. I was wondering why this was relevant to the story. Yeah, that's totally true. It feels like a thing that was tacked on but wasn't actually needed. I sometimes talk about how writers will visualize a scene and write it very early, or at least include it very early, but then by the time the actual book gets written, it's not actually... it doesn't feel organic to it, but it's been such a large part of the author's conception of the book that they include it. And this feels like that, like, oh, this is supposed to be the tone of the book. But it by that point, it was more emotionally affecting to watch him leave Amy than it was to have this kind of like, we're over her post end of the world, we're over it. Not postmodern, but kind of like that thing. Genre savvy. Angry Otter says, I guess it establishes a new status quo, the general apathy. Yeah, because the next book has to do something to get them back in the game if they have at this point decided that they're out of the game. And so that could be kind of interesting to see like how that moves and how the characters evolve or even deepen or not. So if you guys read this book, let us know in the comments below. Have you read the sequels? What did you think of it? What did you think of the movie? Because I just watched a synopsis of it and it did not look great. I could see how it might be fun if you hadn't read the book, but the book is such its own thing that I don't think it translated well into a 2-hour movie. And also, we have a Patreon, as we mentioned earlier. Again, we have a new tier where me and Katie will be creating exclusive videos and live streams once a month. And Maria's AC definitely costs a lot of money. I don't know if I'm going to include that in the edit of this or not. So, but if you don't know,
AC.
So support independent journalism and AC. I'm using the joke again in case I cut it the first time.
I think you're right. You hit it on the nose in the beginning. If this book lands for you, it's gonna land. If this ain't your cup of tea, you are not gonna get through it. Like it's long. It's not like you. I think if it was in the individual novellas, you might have been able to get through the first one and just go, that was fine. I'm not going to read the rest. But I think because it is just one giant book, a lot of people just, if it's not their thing, just DNF.
All right, so sign us out, Maria.
Bye, guys.